goes wild. Good evening and welcome to tonight's NWS Connect virtual hangout. My name is Miles Jakes. I'm one of the clarinet fellows here at the New World Symphony. I'm originally from a small town in Connecticut, Old Lyme. I did my bachelor's degree at the Peabody Conservatory in Baltimore and then went on to the Mannes College in New York for my master's. And this is my third year here at the New World Symphony. Also, tonight we have Darren Hicks.
Hi, my name is Darren Hicks, and I am from a very small farming town on the east coast of Canada. This is my first year as a fellow at the New World Symphony. I play the bassoon, and I did my undergraduate degree at the University of Ottawa up in Ottawa, Canada, and then my graduate degree at Yale University in Connecticut.
Hi, I'm David Rochella, first year horn player here at the New World Symphony. I'm from Syracuse, New York originally, and I went to the Juilliard School for my undergraduate and master's degrees.
Never heard of it. And also tonight we have a very special guest, a recent alum of our oboe section, Kevin Pearl. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Hello. Yes, I'm Kevin Pearl. I'm currently the assistant principal oboe / second oboe of the Milwaukee Symphony. I was a fellow from 2012 to 2015, and I'm originally from Coral Springs, Florida. I did my undergrad degree at the Eastman School of Music in Rochester, New York, and my master's degree at Rice University in Houston, Texas.
Great. So this is normally where we would introduce some of our young students that wanted to join this hangout, but it looks like it's just us tonight for now. So if anybody wants to join, please feel free, get in on the conversation. Tonight we're talking about preparing for auditions, specifically excerpt preparation, because that's such an important part of the audition process. So Darren, you wanted to start off?
Sure.
Tonight?
Yeah. So for me, the whole preparing excerpts happens even before you take your instrument out of the case. So you want to make sure that you are prepared with the hard copies of the music. I prefer to print them off in list order and keep them binded together with either a paperclip or something else. But you can do it on an iPad as well. Just for me, you want to make sure you have some sort of software on your iPad where you can make notes on your music, because that's very important, as somebody else will explain later. And then also, once you print everything out on the list, you want to make sure that you look through all the excerpts, make sure you printed the right pages, because that's happened before where you haven't printed the right pages and you get to the audition and it's too late. And then you want to mark where all the excerpts start on the page. That's very important. Make sure you can find it very quickly on the page. After you've done that, then you can sort of start to think about how you're going to prepare these. And you want to do a lot of listening. So you need to go online, find recordings, of which there are many, where you live in a digital age where everything is available to you. So don't not make use of that. And you also want to get hard copies of the score if you can find them, or you can also find the scores online a lot of the time. Let me see here.
If I could just interject for 1 second. You said putting the excerpts into a particular list. So is that to assume that the orchestra or the school did not provide the excerpts? Should you use excerpts that are provided or print your own? Should you use copies? Should you use original parts?
Right. It's kind of up to you. For the three of us and Kevin, we have extensive libraries of copies of excerpts that we've printed off in the past. So we have a go-to collection of excerpts that we can draw from. But for someone preparing for their very first audition, if the school or orchestra hasn't provided any sort of concrete list that you can print off in that order, you can print them off online or find some sort of resource. If they have provided excerpts, I would always say use the excerpts they provide, because a lot of times they have specific markings that they want you to use in the excerpt. So I guess the answer is whenever they are providing the hard copies, use those.
Very good. Now, do do you like have it bound? Do you keep it in a binder? What do you do? Like
whatever is the most cost effective, really. Like I said, I often just use paper clips because you can find them everywhere, especially if you're in school. A lot of the times I have bound in the past as well, and I find that useful. But that is another cost. You don't have to be fancy. You could just pull pages out of your case as well.
Yeah, I started when I was in college. I made copies of every single part that I would ever have in orchestra, even band, because you never know when like Lincolnshire Posy is going to come up on an audition, and you're very grateful when you have it because it's a rental. So let's shift over now to Kevin. Do you want to talk about your audition process? You recently had such wonderful success, so give us your secrets.
Well, I guess the first secret is that there is no secret, probably, and that's what I had to find out over the course of many years and many auditions, because I kept searching for a secret, and there really wasn't. It just took a lot of organization and a lot of persistence. But as far as, yes, actually practicing the excerpts and working them up to a level where they're going to be successful in the situation. So I guess taking a step then forward from where Darren was going, what excerpts do you practice? Like you have this list in front of you and it's kind of overwhelming. There's a lot of things on there. There's some fast stuff, there's some slow stuff, there's some stuff that just wants, that is control based over your instrument. So that was always very overwhelming for me. And I found that it was nice to, I guess, first number all the excerpts so that then you could break them up into, I did 3 different categories, 3 different chunks of excerpts, a lyrical group, a technical group, and like a control group or other group. And so I would cut up a bunch of different pieces of paper with numbers on them, throw all the numbers corresponding to the lyrical excerpts into one group, the numbers corresponding to technical excerpts, and so forth with the other group. And then when I was sitting down to practice for like a half an hour or so, I would just pick one out of a hat. So lyrical, technical, control. And it sounds silly, but actually taking some of the guesswork out of what to practice and like what you've practiced, and then you can write that down so that you have a written record of it, of what you know that you've practiced. So after that, the basics are, it needs to be in tune and it needs to be in time with excerpts. You want to play in tune with yourself, meaning you don't want notes to be one certain note to be flat all the time or sharp all the time. And you also want to play with a really, really good sense of rhythm. And also corresponding to what Darren said, you want to be able to play with a sense of knowing what the sort of rhythm and background of the orchestral score is. So I found myself practicing with a drone just on a pitch with a metronome very, very slowly for a long time. I mean, for weeks in advance, just getting the basics out of the way with making sure it's in tune, make sure it's in time. And then after that, once I sort of got a feel of the notes under my fingers, I really tried to understand what the character of each excerpt was. And that also made it more fun. And it also made sometimes the technical things a lot easier. If you're just thinking, okay, here are a bunch of notes that I have to, bang out, it's not gonna sound great. It's not gonna be fun, and you may not play it as well. But if this is, let's say, I don't know, energetic, optimistic, or intense, violent, or broad, heroic, those things I found helped incredibly, just for also when you're in the audition situation, but even when you're preparing it, it gives you a sense of purpose to each excerpt. And also along calling them excerpts, the English horn player in the Cleveland Orchestra, Robert Walters, would never allow us, when I was at New World, to call them excerpts. He insisted that we call them arias or songs, orchestral songs or orchestral arias. and really shifting that mindset into, you know, this is like a excerpt versus this is part of a piece of music, and this is a moment, this is a song that you're going to sing, or this is, you know, a dance you're going to dance, something like that, was very helpful to me, both in preparation and in performance. So I would encourage you to just try to, you know, of course, it needs to be, you need to practice within a metronome and do your dotted rhythms, and practice with a tuner or a drone, and record yourself. I know that's kind of, every single teacher says that all the time, but I'll say it again. Even if it's just a phrase, it's very, very important and very, very helpful. And then, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I think, Kevin, you brought up a really good point. At the beginning stages of the practicing, I think my teacher always called them the 4 T's: tune, tone, time, and then for us on clarinet, specifically tongue. It's clarinet players, we have just a habit of not articulating properly, and as an oboist, you can probably agree with me on that. We're not the best with our articulation, so it takes a lot of work. So focusing on those 4 basic skills at the beginning of stages of the practicing can just really pay off in the end. You, Dave, were bringing up a good point before we came in here about your mindset for auditions. What was that?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest misconceptions that students go into auditions today with is they take this technical mindset of time, tune, tone, and they bring it into the audition room with them. And so I think, you know, the biggest thing that has helped me more recently in auditions is separating the two, understanding the difference between the mindset when you're in the practice room, when you're in the workshop, and it's time to get down and really break out your tools like the metronome, the tuner, and fix your problems. Kind of like, you know, a house is an analogy that I used a lot with my students. You know, when you're preparing a list, it's kind of like a group of little houses, and some of them maybe are completely flat. There's nothing there. There's no house because you've never seen the excerpt before. And some of them might be a house that you built a few years ago when you learned one of the excerpts on the list, and maybe it's, you know, a rack and there's, you know, a hole in the window or the side of the wall. And so your job, I think, preparing it is to rebuild all these houses. Some of them might look great. Some of them are, you know, your homegrown ones that you play really well, and those ones might just need a little bit of dusting here and there. So the whole idea in the practice room, in the workshop early on, I'd say maybe 6 weeks, 4 weeks out of the audition for me is building these houses up to the best place I can possibly get them. Then, you know, on the audition day or even, you know, the week of, it's all about your ability to like present these houses to someone. So for me, a lot of what I focus on in my later preparation is the energy I'm going to bring to the audition when I'm really there. I think the best way to get a really dynamic energy going is to not be trapped in this technical practice mindset. So for me, the way that I do that is I try to get excited when I'm in the room warming up, is try to make it a fun experience. Personally, I enjoy auditions, and it's something that has always come naturally to me that way, but I think it's beneficial for everyone to try to get to that place mentally. It's just, yeah, because then if it's fun for you, you're going to do it better. If you enjoy being there that day, you're gonna do better than you would otherwise. Yeah, so when you're there that day, you know, I don't know if many of the listeners are familiar with left brain, right brain, but, you know, practicing is a very left brain activity. Performing is a very right brain activity, performing at your peak, which means when you're there, when you're in the chair and you're behind the screen that day, or, you know, the committee can see you, your goal is to be completely present in the room, not thinking about your intonation or that note that you usually miss or that one excerpt that is always scary to you. Instead, your mindset is completely optimistic, completely excited, and just 100% focused on, I'm going to give them the biggest wow version of myself that I can. Because that energy, when you come in with it and you're really convinced that you're going to do your best, the committee can feel that. They can sense it. You know, if they can see you, they can see it in the way that you walk in, the way you sit down, or if you're behind the screen, they can hear it in your playing. And so I think that's one of the biggest things that differentiates people in auditions today is that self-belief and that energy coming in and your ability to turn off that technical information and really just sing along with the orchestra in your head as you've practiced, and really just let go, kind of accept that you don't have full control over the situation that you're in, and just trusting yourself fully.
Yeah, some really good points there.
Could I add something onto that?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you 100%, Dave, and that helped me a lot. And another specific thing in the audition that helped me a lot was changing my mindset about what the committee or what the person listening to me was thinking. I mean, ideally, you can just be so engaged with what you're doing, you forget that there are other people there. That happened to me a couple of times, but most of the time I was very aware that they were there. And especially when I messed up or when it didn't sound so good, for years, my initial reaction would be, oh man, that's not good. They think I'm not good anymore. And that from there on, it would just spiral downwards sometimes, or it just wouldn't be as good as possible. When I was at New World, I started practicing shifting that belief into they're loving what I'm doing right now. The judges, the panel, the adjudicator, the professor that I'm auditioning for at college is loving each and every note that I'm playing right now. And some of the time it was faking it. I was faking that thinking, but it shifted everything in how I was performing at that moment. Because believing that the person was really, really loving what you're doing, and which probably is true. But it's much better than what can happen with a lot of us when we feel like we're being judged in an audition situation, which is, oh, they didn't like that, or they're not liking what I'm doing. So I would really encourage you as early on as possible to just adapt that mindset of, they're really liking this and I'm really delivering.
Yeah, I think to go off that point a little bit too, definitely great to be in that place mentally. And I think when you're in the room and things don't start going your way, like you talked about, a lot of people's initial reaction is, oh no, it's over kind of thing, especially if you're in a high pressure situation for an audition that you feel like is, a tougher one. You feel like you make your first mistake and it's over. Really usually not the case. And I think it's oftentimes the way that you respond to that mistake that will really show a committee something. So I think the mindset that I've tried to cultivate and I think is really effective is, as soon as something happens in the audition where maybe it's not quite what you want, it's almost like you need to kick it into another gear where you need to like show them now in the immediate following passage that was just a little mishap, and here's the next great thing I'm going to do. Maybe the best thing that you've done in the audition so far is going to come right after that mistake, and that's going to show the committee like, that you're a fighter and you're going to hang in there and you're not just going to fold to the first mistake that you make. I was just out in Atlanta auditioning for the Atlanta Symphony, an audition that I made finals in, didn't win, but close. And I had some moments in my semifinal round where I could feel kind of like a semi truck coming around the cliff with no rail, and you're about to, it's tilting and you're keeping it on the trail. And my mindset during that time when, I could feel an excerpt slipping was just push it more. You need to show them what you can do. And I think that is something that I've worked on for a long time. And I think it's really, really important to avoid, an early mistake in an audition and having the whole thing collapse on you. Learning to fight back. It's going to save you a lot of time and trouble, I think, in auditions generally.
Yeah, that's all really good points. One thing I wanted to add was, I think when we are preparing for auditions, sometimes we lose focus on basic technique things that we need to work on. So something that I'm constantly telling my students is, yeah, you're preparing for your college audition, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't be practicing your scales or working on long tones and tone production. You're still trying to get better as you go through these auditions and through the process of auditioning. And I think if this is something that I did not do when I was in college, and I really wish I could go back and spend more time. And if my teacher's listening, you were right. I should have done this more. If you put the work in when you're younger or at the beginning stages of the audition, it's just, you get such a greater return on that initial investment. And so if you're practicing your scales and you're working on your long tones, and as wind players, we're all wind players here, working on air support, breath support, even when you get into the audition situation and something happens, something goes wrong, like what Kevin was just talking about or Dave mentioned, you still have that foundation from all of the hard work that you did, and muscle memory is going to kick in. And even if you're frantic in the audition, you still have all of that work that you did, and you can rely on that. And it's like warming up for a marathon or a race. You don't want to just all of a sudden start running 26 miles. You want to warm up a little and get your body right. And so yeah, that's all I wanted to say. Darren, you look like you were about to say something.
We've sort of touched on the audition day itself. We've touched on keeping the basics in mind, which is a really good point, actually. But I want to kind of go back to what Kevin was talking about when you were saying something along the lines of Robert Walters wouldn't let you call it an excerpt because it's not an excerpt. It lives and breathes within a piece. So I kind of want to ask you how you go about making sure that you are aware of the context in which this excerpt exists.
That's a good question, Darren. Well, I think knowing the context by listening to the music and listening to the piece as much as possible is really important. And so just in general, when I was preparing for auditions, I would have like a playlist of just the music, the pieces, and be listening to them, having them get into my DNA. And then for that specific solo, that specific moment, or that specific technical passage, then I would, listen to that part, obviously, with my part, and imagine that I was playing with it. And then sometimes I would actually play with the orchestral score playing either, in my earphones or in a speaker, which was really, really helpful because sometimes you're not going to get to play those pieces before you play them in an audition. And if you can sort of like fake that you've done it in your living room, you can bring that sensory experience that's in your subconscious or your conscious, whatever, into the room with you. That's incredibly helpful, both for knowing or sounding like you know what's going on, which is important, and just for a sense of comfort. You can if you can really imagine the sounds around you, you feel like you're not just like one single solitary person in this sound vacuum, which is a horrible feeling. But if you can imagine very, very strongly the music around you, then I think it works on many different levels.
I agree. And also that's what the committee's doing. They're thinking of their own parts that's happening during your solo. So that's a really good point.
Well, I mean, even if it's not an orchestral audition, if you're doing like a college thing and they want you to play a piece with piano or even a piece by yourself, if you're aware of what the piano part has, or if you're just aware of in general what the piece is as a whole, I think it really helps you put forth a more convincing performance.
Definitely.
Sorry. Did you want to add something?
Yes. I think part of that, awareness of what is in the part is great. Looking at the score, knowing what other instruments are doing around you is amazing. I think it's a separate skill set to be able to turn that on in the audition. This type of internal speaker that we all have, I think, in varying degrees. I think it's something that needs to be practiced. And I think just walking around and trying to hear the orchestra in your head on a daily basis is something that's it's like a muscle that will get stronger. And then when you're there in the audition that day, it'll be easier for you to turn that on and just play along with it. Like you said, I think the committee, there'll be a violin player there maybe for your audition. And let's say even if you're a brass player, they'll be hearing their part along with what you're doing. And if you're not hearing their part also, you're probably not going to be exactly rhythmically precise with what's going on there. So it's super, super important to know what's going on and be able to turn it on when it's time to perform.
For sure. Great point. Yeah. We actually had a question come in. I don't know if it was on Mosaic or what, but the question was, what's your advice for preparing an excerpt in a limited time frame, like a few weeks? Anyone?
I was actually going to go back to something towards that topic. So I am historically not great with time management. So that's not great, especially for, preparing an audition or preparing a college audition, when you have tons of other things going on in your life. So I would often find myself spending like, I don't know, a half an hour on one excerpt or one part of one excerpt, and then sort of getting some productivity done, but then also way too much time had passed and I had all this other stuff that I needed to do. So this question might have been just one single excerpt, but usually there are, I guess, multiple. So what I found was very, very helpful was to just set a timer, and to have maybe 3 or 4 different passages in either a solo piece or an excerpt that you wanted to work on, or even the whole excerpt if it's short. I would do 10 minutes, which is long enough to get a decent amount of really focused, intentional work done, but not so long where you just start to get bogged down and really, spin your wheels. Move to the next aria or solo, whatever. Work on that for 10 minutes. Go to the third one and do that. And then a trick that I learned from this performance psychologist that works with New World a lot, Noah Kageyama, is then to go back to that first piece and try to play it again. Because one of the problems with working on one thing for a long time is that you never really have to go back to it and start again. And sometimes starting it again is the hardest thing. So timer 5 to 10 minutes, do some diligent work on it, move on, and then come back. That will sort of train you much quicker and sort of get you in the gear of those excerpts much quicker than spending 1 hour, on one. And I think it's the most efficient way to do it for me.
Right. Yeah, I agree. Definitely important to cut down the time. And what that's going to do too is make you more efficient in the practice room. And I think efficiency in preparation is massive, especially on a limited time frame. But I think to go along with a limited time frame and just general preparation is that, there's no exact right answer to the question of how do you prepare on a limited time frame, because every audition for every person is different. There's your technical ability versus what is demanded of you on the list. There's how much time you have to do it. There's your competition. There's the people listening to it. There's just so many factors. So a lot of people, like we were talking about a little before this today, like to come up with these how-tos and these really detailed methods. If you do X, Y, and Z, and it's almost like they're trying to give you the secret of auditions. And newsflash, there's not one. There is no magical guide that you're going to do. It's going to guarantee you an audition win. You need to come up with that how-to for yourself is my biggest thing. And the way you do that is identifying your problems and then being efficient in your problem solving. So that's the biggest 2 pieces of advice I would give someone trying to get ready on a few weeks preparation is identify your problems as quickly as possible and try to find the most efficient ways to fix them using the tools that you've been given by all the teachers you ever worked with or things that you've intuited on your own. You kind of at this age, as I'm guessing most of your high school students, the goal is to be a sponge, to soak in bits of information from every teacher you've ever heard and keep the really good stuff and wring out some of the bad stuff. Because you will hear things that aren't going to work for you personally or things that maybe worked at one point in time but don't anymore. So yeah, my biggest thing is to be a critical thinker for yourself, to solve your own problems, and don't rely necessarily on any one teacher's advice. Don't get obsessed with one teacher. A lot of people fall into that trap. I feel like it's good to look at the body of information and try to understand it on a wider scheme than that. That's going to help you fix your things the most quickly.
Yeah, I totally agree. I have a question for you guys. So we've talked a lot about preparing excerpts, preparing auditions, what to do on the day of, but this may sound silly, but how do you guys prepare yourself, away from your instrument? Is there something specific you eat the day of the audition? Do you eat a banana? Do you all this stuff? What do you guys do?
For me specifically, I do nothing different. So I just if I'm working on excerpts for the 2 months before the audition, and I eat whatever I want in the morning, and then I do the same on the audition day. You're a living, breathing human being. You can't put this crazy pressure and everything on yourself. You just got to exist and do what you do normally. And that's my
philosophy. Yeah, do you have any special routines? Even athletes. have rituals that they go through, like on game day or.
Yeah.
Do you guys have any like?
Sorry.
I mean, just for me, I just try to stay hydrated because I know that when you get that adrenaline rush, your body tends to just soak up water like crazy.
Yeah.
So I tend to drink like probably 5 times what I normally would on the day.
Yeah. Water is super, super important. I completely agree with Dan on this. There is no, like, I've heard people say, oh, I have an audition in 2 weeks. I'm going to stop drinking caffeine.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't know why this is the time in your life you're deciding to make this massive change. I think, stay with what you've been doing. I think the biggest thing to do is to try to cultivate a healthy lifestyle on your own, outside of like for an audition. Just do it for yourself. And, I think coming prior to Atlanta, which was just last week, I had a very healthy couple weeks beforehand. I was doing a lot of yoga, started making kale shakes recently, just taking more vitamins than I normally do. Gross. But, living healthier. And I did feel the most clear that I felt in an audition. I did feel mentally the strongest that I felt in one. And I think there's a direct correlation between those things. So I think, rather than don't do it for the audition, do it for yourself and then keep it going when it's time for the audition.
Although I gotta say, if you in an audition get shaky and nervous and you actually have a hard time controlling your hands, maybe you want to stop drinking caffeine.
There's alternatives.
I agree personally with Dave, but that may not necessarily be what works for you. And what Dave said about how he prepares for auditions, it goes the same with your own. You know yourself better than anyone else. So
right.
Yeah.
I agree.
I have found, like, whether it's placebo or not, the eating bananas thing, that's definitely helped me. It's potassium is shown to be calming, but I think also if you get into something like, I know that this can help, so I'm going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever it helps to get you in the right mindset of I'm cool, calm, collected, and confident, do that. But yeah, like Dave was saying, if you're waiting till the day to be healthy and all that kind of stuff, it's too late.
Yeah.
But on one thing that I have done in preparation and definitely on the day is either some sort of like deep breathing, meditation, or visualizing yourself in the audition room. That I would do that before, like weeks before as well, periodically, but the morning of or whatever, some just sitting there breathing deeply for a while, visualizing yourself walking into the room, playing really, really well, wowing the judges, walking off. That's a sort of a sports technique that a lot of musicians have adopted, and it helped me immensely.
Yeah, that's a good point. We had a coach down here. I don't know if you remember this, Kevin, but I won't say who the coach was, and I'll even pick a different instrument. But this person said, I walk around a month before and I envision myself, I am the principal clarinet of the New York Philharmonic, like not saying that it was the principal clarinet of the New York Philharmonic that said that, but they walk around with the confidence and they think that they are. And this person seems to think it helps. So
I think, varying degrees of that do help. I think when you look at athletes, for example, when you look at the very top, there is a certain level of like almost madness that can go into it. When you look at figures like Michael Jordan, Muhammad Ali, people operating at the really like pinnacle of their craft, it's the self-belief is so just unshakable. And I think that really does make a difference in performance. For me, getting to that kind of state before an audition, a lot of it happens in the waiting room beforehand.
Mm.
And for this past audition, if you walked into my audition room, you would have seen me with hip hop music playing through my phone, which I like. And whatever kind of music you're into, whatever kind of music gets you excited and feeling good, ready to go, that's what you should do. For me, it's hip hop. And so you would have heard me kind of noodling around a little bit, listening to that, kind of walking around the room, staying loose. And that's my way of kind of generating this feel. But that's a very practiced state. I will be on a bike ride over to New World here before I'm going to practice my list a couple weeks before, and I'll be doing the same thing, trying to get myself hyped up for the practice session. And it's almost like, I don't know if you get the sensation if you get like the chills when you're listening to something. If I can get myself to that place before I go in, I know I'm in a good place where I'm going to be able to direct a lot of positive energy out. So that's just what works for me.
I kind of want to know what everybody's, if you had one top tip for excerpt preparation, what would it be? And I can go first if you need to.
Yeah.
I think for me, we have at New World, we have our side-by-side concert coming up soon.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that they're sending out the excerpts just a few weeks before the audition day. And so I think probably that question was related to that somehow. But for me, I want to make sure everyone just tries their best. You can prepare as well as you can, obviously work really hard, but just do your best. That's my top excerpt practice thing, is every day, just do your best on the day.
Dave?
Come back to me.
Kevin, what's your one tip?
Top tip.
This is related to Darren's top tip, but it's maybe just the other side of it or something, is enjoy yourself. Do your best, but also try to have fun while doing it. Because that's a day or a half a day or 30 minutes or 15 minutes out of your life. And you still want to try to enjoy yourself, and you remember that you like playing music. Auditions may not be fun, but you like playing music. And this is music, and you get to express yourself, and you get to express the composer, and you get to play your instrument. So yeah, long story short, enjoy yourself.
Mine, I guess, would be, since you and Darren took the best ones,
Sorry.
is definitely have fun, definitely do your best, but also my tip would be trust yourself. You've put in the work, and you're ready for the audition. So just, yes, have fun, do your best, and trust yourself.
Okay.
Good luck.
All great. I agree with all of them for sure. Mine is a little more complicated. I think a common misconception people fall into in preparation is obsessing over things they're bad at. I think you do need to spend a lot of time working on the things that you're the worst at, but what builds confidence in the practice room is getting better at what you're already good at also. So for me, I categorize my excerpts into 3s, 2s, and 1s. 3s being the ones that I don't feel would advance in an audition. 2s being the ones that are solid enough to advance. 1s being the ones that are going to be hopefully some of the best they've heard that day at the audition. So for me, the goal is to make the 1s as amazing as possible, and I spend a lot of time doing that. And the second goal is turning the 3s into 2s. If I can get my 3s to all be 2s, and I can make my 1s amazing, you're going to put yourself in a position to win. The goal is not to make your 3s 1s. So be aware of what you're good at and what your weaknesses are, and try to get even better at what you're good at and bring your weaknesses up to a level that's going to be passable. But don't make the mistake of, if you're a great high player, trying to come in and show them you're the best low horn player alive when you're not. Focus on what works for you.
Great. So we're just about out of time. And before we are done, I just want to mention that our next NWS Connect virtual hangout will be on February 9th at 6:45. And we're going to have a special guest, Alex Carr. He's the concertmaster of the Dallas Symphony and artist faculty at the Aspen Music Festival, and also one of our favorite coaches down here at New World. And the topic will be preparing for your first orchestra rehearsal. So does anybody have anything else that they'd like to add before we wrap up?
Quick, everyone's favorite excerpt, go.
Oh, God. Shostakovich Violin Concerto.
On bass clarinet.
On bass clarinet,
Right.
Yeah. On clarinet, Capriccio Espagnol.
78, 79, Heldenleben, horn tutti.
Rehearsal
Very
78.
specific.
I just played it, yeah.
Very specific. Mine's Chassis 9, Shostakovich 9th Symphony, 4th and 5th movement.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Kevin?
Oh man, it's been a while. I really like playing Rossini La Scala di Seta. It's really fun.
Excellent choice.
Yes, expected.
Expected.
I expected you to say that one. Anyway, so that's it for today. Thank you for joining us, Kevin. I don't know why the camera's stuck on Dave, but he looks good, so.
Come in, guys.
Bye.
There we go.
There we go.
Oh, okay. All right, good night.
Thanks.